A prominent member of the Film Critics Circle of India, Devdutt Trivedi is an energetic, unconventional cinephile who lectures on classical film theory at Dice Vancouver Film School. Known for his unique approach of unlearning intentions in filmmaking to produce pure, spontaneous art, the suave critic is glad to get an insight from him when it comes to conversation on Lacan, cinema, and more. So, hello everyone. This time, like instead of a conventional interview, I have the opportunity to have a much more intellectual sort of conversation. Welcome, Devdutt sir. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
So today's topic would be Lacanian film theory and how it relates to the self in cinema. And we'll be loosely like talking about three films, which like I call a trinity of genres. And I'd love to have your opinion on this. But a fiction film, which is Idiot or Ahmaq by Mani Kaul, a non-fiction documentary, which is F for Fake by Orson Welles, and finally a biopic by Andrei Tarkovsky, Andrei Rublev. So I actually wanted to ask you first before like we have a regular conversation is that what value do you think lies in Lacanian interpretation?
Uh, you see, I'm constantly changing my approach to film. For cinema, I feel it's very close to the sport. Tennis, I watch tennis like it's a film. And Antonioni was a very good tennis player. He won a lot of championships. Godard has made a film, Soft and Hard, where he's just like with a tennis racket and jumping around all over the place. It's very interesting. And I watch Wimbledon religiously, and for me, and all the ATP tours. For me, I like several players. One of whom I won't name him, but the way he's like aged a bit and moves around the court, because knowing, he's changing his approach to the point every time. And right now at Wimbledon, he's not in the best of nick, because he's not at match practice, had a couple of surgeries. And for me, the way you play when you've not had match practice, you've had injuries, and then you play in that particular way, that's really intriguing. That's very cinematographic for me. I find that cinema is not about consciousness anymore. I feel consciousness in film has to do with matter. Like this is the consciousness. Devdutt and Svanik and the window behind me, the books here, the bed behind you, that is a consciousness. It's not about whether Devdutt has consciousness as a filmmaker. So the point I want to make today, since you're into this Lacan phase, and so am I. This is a book I'm reading right now.
Awesome.
So for me, it's not about the real or the self anymore. I've been studying a lot of Buddhism and Jainism as opposed to Advaita Vedanta. And you'll see, Swanik, this year, if we have lectures, it's going to be crazy. Like, you guys are going to completely lose it because you'll be like, what is Devdutt sir saying? The lose was so simple compared to this. If we do have those lectures this year, you'll be like, God save us. This is the real thing. This is the philosophical practice of cinema, which is something Mr. Kaul talks about, Bresson talks about, but they just talk about it beyond the point, to actually engage it. There's no discourse on that. So you post this clip, they'll say that, who the hell is Devdutt to talk about the philosophical practice of cinema? What does he know? He can't compare himself to Mr. Kaul and Bresson. I'm not. They're geniuses. I'm not. But they don't actually talk about how. How I used to ask Mr. Kaul, talking about Idiot, before my eyes, Oscurity, before my eyes, the balloon collapses. So I would ask Mr. Kaul, why did you take that shot? And he didn't answer me. He just said, it's a very simple shot to take. What is the question? But the reason why it's so important, that shot of the balloon deflating, is because that's when you see what cinema is trying to do is it's creating a self outside you, but there is no self outside you. Now that's a paradoxical situation. You are pointing a camera at something and you're actually talking about Devdutt. If I point a camera at Svanik and I say that this is Devdutt, the audience would say, obviously this is not Devdutt. This is a representation of Svanik. This is the problem of cinema. Therefore, to do away with this problematic of cinema, I have to have a way by which Swanik actually comments on the way Devdutt is. And this is known as sensorial collapse, where the materiality of the shot that I have Swanik, I have that cupboard at the back, those drawers, this mic, that bed, those curtains. From this Swanik image, how can I go back to Devdutt? It's very difficult to do, very easy to talk about and have a Zoom meeting. Very difficult to do. How do you delay action and reaction so that the consciousness of the spectator moves into the interior? Because for me, the entire problem with cinema is it's about the outside world. For me personally, I feel that it's not about the outside world. I'm not interested in the outside world. It's so boring. I mean, politics and sociology and all, it's boring. I'm interested in exploring myself, but there is no self. So now you're in real trouble because you said I'm interested in myself, but there is no self.
Right.
I've just been reading, Nagarjuna's Madhyamika, which is the middle approach, and Nagarjuna talks about how if you say there's an anatman, if there is no self, like that is what Lacan is also saying. He's saying the real exists, the self doesn't. So if you say that there's no self, that there's a negation, that there's a shunyata, which means zero, then you get attached to that. You'll say that, yeah, there's a zero. I feel it. Wow, I feel bliss because I feel zero. No, but that's also dangerous. No, that's why he's given you zero so that you don't get attached to it. So so two questions: how to move from Swanik's image to the interior of Devdutt, or from Devdutt's image in the black shirt and the the windows behind, and how to move that from that to Swanik's self, But there is no self. But why is there no self? Yes, there is a self. No, but there is no self because you get attached that there's a self, there's a self, there's a self, and then you start saying, "Oh, I feel a lot of joy and this and that," which is not real,
Right.
I'm very influenced by Mandukya Upanishad, Advaita Vedanta, but right now, because I change every year, right now what is really like helping me live my life, because when I see an Ozu film, when I see a Mizoguchi film, it helps me live my life. It's not about that, oh, it's a good film, the 50 lens, low angle was really good, So that's not what it's about, It's about how did it help you live your life. And right now for me, Lacan is certainly not helping. And Buddhism is helping because it's saying that there's nothing, but don't get attached to that. And you have this difference between Bodhisattva and Arhat. So I come from a J. Krishnamurti school, whom Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh Osho talks of as an Arhat. So how to do away with the Arhat, and being able to Arhat means someone who has realized the truth but does not know how to communicate it. Maybe you can say that I am a really bad professor and then I claim that, oh, I know a lot about cinema. All nonsense. I know nothing about cinema. That's why I know something about cinema. So this idea of not relating to the self, and not saying I'm a self, I feel bliss, my conscious see, basically what Guattari says, who's one of Lacan's students, is that the unconscious should be constructed. But actually, to construct the unconscious, you need to go into a combination of the ego interacting with the aid. The ego and the aid have to almost be united with each other, and then you will feel the bliss. But for that, you have to. So Guattari says, for that you'll have to construct the unconscious. Sounds very fascinating. My question to Felix is how. How will you construct the unconscious? It's very difficult. You can't say that. No. Today, Swanik, I'm taking a break from life. I'm constructing my unconscious. That's ridiculous. I would say, what are you talking about? Instead, just go point a camera at something, make a film, say, Swanik, watch my new film. You say it's terrible. Because for me, Swanik, I've been lecturing for 15 years now, and it's really about practice, It's about students telling me that, sir, have you made a film? And you haven't. So you're an idiotic professor. And I completely agree with them. I totally agree with them. Let's see your films. Let's see how you can practice. And for me, this practice has a lot to do with there being no self. So your entire topic of the Lacanian side, like we would say truth is one, but for me, truth is not one. What is reality? Nobody talks about reality. I was just reading this book on Nagarjuna, and they say Dravya is reality. It's a beautiful name, Dravya, reality. Cinema, neorealism, new wave, Kirostami, they're all giving you ways of dealing with reality. But then in your reality, if you're pathological, you can't deal with the fact that you don't have a job or you don't have a things are not going your way, then there's no point saying that, oh, I don't have a job and I'm very depressed, but let's watch Kiarostami. No, you've defeated the point. So how does cinema help you live life? And living life, how can you use that practice and transform that back into cinema? You see, I'll tell you very simply, secret of cinema is that you show this phone, you show Devdutt, and you show Swanik. 1, 2, 3. Phone, Devdutt, Swanik. But in all the three, you don't show anything. How do you create the... So Heidegger says, why is there something instead of nothing? But I agree with Mani Kaul, who used to tell me that how can there be something when there is nothing? I agree with Mani Kaul. I don't agree with Heidegger that there is something. I feel there is nothing and deal with it. Life is not easy. It's tough. It is by nature difficult. This is something... Okay, the other thing I would like to say is life is not about being happy. Okay, it's like a very petty bourgeois idea. Oh, I'm so happy. Happiness. I feel happiness watching an Urdu film. Well, you're better off not watching an Urdu film. That's what your expectations from life. Sorry, I've spoken
No.
on a rant, but yeah, the things
I think an interesting idea out of this comes out is like what is perceived as the transcendental. In like it is often perceived as a way of gaining happiness or something, and in that way I think it is very appropriate for Lacan to reject this transcendence
yeah,
within his theory.
yeah.
But so you spoke about the truth in between, but how much, like Lacan has this very famous quote of him saying, whatever I say is the truth. How much do you associate his theory with the truth in cinema?
Well, what Lacan means is that whatever I say is the truth, and that is in language, and language is the truth. That's what Lacan means. It
Okay.
means the truth is language. In a book called My Teaching, he says my teaching is language. So fat cat, bat, sat, mad cat, all these rhyming words exist in a totality of the self, which is appropriated by God, who says that therefore there is a transcendental. And then
Hmm.
Deleuze comes, and we study Deleuze's film theories because he says that no, there is no structure. Fat cat, Batman, sad cat, fat. There's no structure. So
Right.
water is turning red. Like I have a lot of idiotic things I say, like meow meow cats are normal, and meow 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 cats are Jain, and meow 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 cats are Buddhist, and meow 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 meow. It's idiotic. But what Deleuze is trying to do is he's trying to emphasize that nonsense is the only black humor through nonsense is a way of because if you watch a Satyajit Ray film, he's actually saying that okay, there's irony, and this is the nature of the modern. And then
Hmm.
you have the postmodern, which is that there's only black humor. So you watch films like Fargo or the Coen Brothers films or Pulp Fiction, and these are all postmodern because they're saying, okay, it's black humor. That Pulp Fiction basically it can show you that this person who's dead is actually now alive. And that's a remarkable transformation that when John Travolta comes back in the end, you actually believe that, okay, he's alive. This dead person is alive. That is
Right. And like, I guess from that, I think the best example that I could think of is Andrei Rublev, wherein you have this particular part of the entire film of Bell, and you have Boris and his father's secret. And that is complete nonsense. It does not actually exist.
yeah,
Right. And he constructs it. And then from that, he proceeds to make a bell.
yeah.
So I found that pretty interesting. But anything in particular you felt in that film that stood out to you?
Yes, basically that, canvas is a surface, and Tarkovsky is trying to say film is also a surface. It's just a surface, yeah. How can there be sacred, profane, good, bad, storytelling, fiction, non-fiction? How can that be? It's just a surface. Yeah. And since you talked about idiot, the example Mr. Paul would give me is he would say, I just went to Netherlands, and there's like this kind, Mr. Paul would say, not me, I've never been to the Netherlands. And there's this kind of prismatic, kind of hexagonal, like you have IMAX, which is the dome. In
Hmm.
Holland, you have this kind of hexagonal shaped screen. And once you have this hexagonal shaped screen, you have this moving projector, right? Right. So the image is like the at least with IMAX, the distance between camera and object is the same. But the moment you have an hexagonal and you realize how it's a surface. Now it's very easy to do that with a dome screen or hexagonal screen like I'm talking about. But to do that in a film, it's very easy to talk and say that, oh, there's time pressure, there's the self is mirror reflected in the manifest world, bim, pratibim, etc. It's very easy to talk and take lectures, but to actually create a practice which is original and which 1969, right, 50 years down the line, you still are talking about it. It's not easy. It's really difficult. A lot of people, I interact with say that, tell us about your ideas on film. And I tell them that they say that, yeah, they are interesting. I say, well, they may be interesting, but to practice that in a film is close to impossible. This entire idea that Mr. Kaul has, or, that in Satasya Utta Admi, I'll construct a body without organs. But basically, body without organs that Deleuze talks about, from my understanding and studying Deleuze since 2009, so that's 13 years, 12 years, is that matter consists of a space, of a self. Matter consists of a self. And cinema confuses the thing in itself, which is the noumenon, Kantian noumenon, and the totality of matter, which is the Kantian or Heideggerian Heil. So cinema confuses noumenon with Heil. This is what cinema does. So what is the solution out of this problem? If you confuse noumenon and Heil, you're a really bad philosopher. You're a third-rate philosopher. It's such a basic idea, totality of matter and thing in itself. How can you confuse them? It's so easy to understand they're different. But cinema does that. Cinema confuses these two things. So what is the solution to the problem? I'm telling you the problem. Now there has to be Deleuze says that the solution is in the problem. So the solution for me is that Jainism. Jainism, which talks about matter and the self being in matter and the self manifesting. See, the thing with cinema, which I taught you in the first lecture, is that it's in between on and off. So Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh says that that's science. Science is interested in the middle. So you're unmanifest before you're born. You still exist. You're just not manifest. However old you are, 21, 22, 22 years ago, you are unmanifest. And someday you die. You'll again be unmanifest. But you're still there. It's very stupid to think that I knew Swanik in his manifest self and now he is no more. No, now he's still there. He's just unmanifest. Jean-Luc Godard, for me, is the filmmaker who has come closest to accessing the unmanifest in film, but he's still interested in his new film, which will be in your new semester if I get the gig, Image, Livre de Image. He's not able to go beyond the manifest. And because to go beyond the manifest means to say that Devdutt is alive just now, but he may die, but I still feel his energy of talking so much stupid things about cinema are still with me, that is the unmanifest, but you point a camera and you get the manifest. So that's a huge limitation. That's like saying that if we don't have a Zoom call, I'm dead. So that's ridiculous. I'm in my house, you're in your house, you're doing your things. You can't say that, no, Devdutt is not alive. Why? Well, we didn't have a Zoom call with him, so he's dead. So next Tuesday, he'll be alive. Yeah, he'll come back to life. That's actually an interesting way of looking at life, that, every day you go to sleep, you die, and in the morning you get up. But cinema for me is very limited because it's interested only in the manifest reality. That's very ridiculous. And science is only talking about experiment, inference, objective. Well, that's a manifest inference. That's a manifest experiment.
Right.
What is the entire idea that you can have a seed that becomes a plant, science can study the seed and study the plant, but it can't study the transformation from the seed to the plant, because the seed is a condition of potentiality for a whole massive tree, right? It's such a small seed, and it's a huge tree. So how do you explain that? So that is the seed, that is rosebud in Citizen Kane, which becomes the tree, which is all these. So that is cinema, and science is saying that no, now science has proved a God particle. It's ridiculous. Why should I care? I either believe in God or don't believe in God. I don't need a proof for the existence of God. It
Uh-huh.
limits my imagination. Now, if you say that, this has this mass and at the speed of light, it has no mass. So that's a state within me, that I feel light. I feel light. That's what Milan Kundera calls the unbearable lightness of being. No. So that's something within me. Why should I study this mobile phone going at the speed of light? That's a waste of my time. And now I'm actually going to apply for state funds and say that, no, please give me some money. I need to find out whether this phone has mass at speed of light. It's a waste of state funds and your time, because what you know of the phone is only what you see. No, it's a manifestation of the phone, which is a huge problem for me. So this is the problem. This is the impasse with cinema, impasse that cinema reaches, that it's only interested in the manifest, not in the unmanifest.
Right.
But if you have to create a, like you're saying, Lacanian real, or Guattari is constructing the unconscious and all that, then you have to go beyond the manifest. No, you can't say that, oh, it's a good film. No, it's not a good. Like Ustad Zia Friduddin Dagar would say that when I sing Ga also, it goes back to Sa. What is he trying to say? He's trying to say, I'm singing Ga, but the unmanifest is the primordial Sa of the Ra.
Uh-huh.
So manifest and unmanifest. So it's there in music. It's not there in cinema, because they are like, कौन सी lens use करोगे, camera distance, or it's all manifest. Yeah, it's not so interesting.
So therefore, you think we must puncture reality, bring a sensory motor color collapse, so that the unmanifest can sort of be presented on the screen.
My friend, we don't need a sensory motor collapse. We are in the sensory motor collapse, which is COVID-19. Sensory motor collapse. It's a crisis in representation. No? Nobody meets anyone. Nobody goes out. Nobody interacts. Where's the representation? Zoom? Zoom is not a representation. It's completely fake. You
Right.
can't take this seriously. That no, I talked to him on Zoom and I really met him and we talked about. So you're an ignorant person. So how to do away with the layers of ignorance? Like sheath of an onion. There's so many layers of ignorance. My entire complaint with myself is that, because I can't complain about others, I can complain about myself. My complaint about myself is that I'm not ignorant. I'm very, very ignorant. I'm extraordinarily ignorant. If there was a talent for being ignorant, I'm extremely gifted. That's a problem. And now you're going to say, no, give me 3 crores, Swanik. Tell your pop, give me 3 crores. I'm making a film. See my lecture. Nonsense. You're an ignorant person. Yeah. You need to realize the self and without getting attached to it. So Lacan is saying that, okay, this is my language and I'm teaching you language, and that is the real, which is different from the real order, different from reality. So what is the real? Okay, that's a lot of good use of language, and it's like a lot of, but it doesn't move me beyond the point. It's good to read it. It's important to know, but it doesn't really do something. But then Guattari says unconscious should be constructed. Okay, show me how. I'll do that. I'll spend my whole, because for me, cinema is basically, you're going into a dark room, right? You're seeing the image, and then you are asleep. So then the film is a construction of the unconscious. And what Lacan says is that the unconscious is structured according to real, symbolic, imaginary.
Right.
Right. So the symbolic code, like Zoom is the symbolic code and language is the symbolic code. That doesn't function. Good. So now the real and the imaginary are all you have. And the imaginary is nothing but your fantasy consciousness. That I'm actually, Jean-Luc Godard, looking like Devdutt Trivedi. I'm actually Godard, and then I actually think I'm Godard. Like I used to meet this guy who used to say that, did he say I'm like Bresson? But you're really ignorant. Yeah, you're not like Bresson. So that's a stupid thing to say. He actually used to tell me, my boss introduced me today. Did he say a new employee is like Bresson? Then you have a major problem, no? If you think you are like Bresson. So that is actually the problem of cinema, according to me.
Perhaps it's more ignorant than saying I'm like myself. So
what is the self? A self is nothing. You don't have a self, but you can't say that because you get attached to that. You say I'm no self, I'm no self. Shunyata also, zero has a content because it's a complete circle.
Hmm.
So it's a complete circle, zero. So it has an interiority and an exteriority. This is the problem with zero. This is why the Buddhists say you should not get attached to shunyata. Anyway, continue.
Interesting. So one idea of cinema that I consider very interesting is how, when in its self-aware forms, how it can be like this performative artifice, which is, I think, where we come to F for fake, wherein you have so many creations of artifice. You have this Wells creating this a self ideal, a sort of a trick of showing probably his true self per se, but everything like it it's the one like it uses movements to sort of show that, no, as not the as a real trick in itself, right? So what do you think in terms of that film? uh,
Well, what Wells is trying to do is he's trying to say that the succession of images are true, but the whole is false. Therefore, it's a Lacanian film, like you'd like to know, which is that it's fake, and the language, the linguistic code in the symbolic order, like he says in the symbolic order that even Picasso knows that a real Picasso is different from a fake Picasso.
right, right.
Picasso can draw a fake Picasso. This is all language. No, you're not going to be interested that, okay, Sonic, can you construct a fake interview with me? And then
Hmm.
you do really moronic things and then you put it as Zoom mockumentary. That would be interesting. It's an interesting genre, Zoom
Right.
mockumentary, right? Behaving in really stupid, idiotic, nonsensical ways and putting it up and say, no, this is actually our interview. No, we didn't. The new genre of cinema. You should probably try it out. Get a few really, ignorant people and
Hmm.
get them to behave in really outstandingly ignorant ways, and then say this is a new genre. You actually have the reverse shots, cross cuts between you and me talking. It'll be like the reverse shot. And what is a reverse shot? There is no reverse shot. You know so what Deleuze says is that the difference between the cutout, which is a short reverse shot, and the whole frame is the problematic of cinema. Bazin is saying that the problematic of cinema is that, okay, you don't have short reverse shot, you place the camera at a distance, and then you have the ontological proof of reality, which is because God exists, and then it's a very Catholic construct which Bazin is constructing. But
Hmm.
the problematic of cinema is that when you have the relationship between the cutout and the whole, you should make the whole collapse onto itself so that only the cutout is real. You're seeing the cutout, you're not seeing the whole. Problem with most 99.99% filmmakers is that they show you the cutout, then they
Hmm.
show you the whole, then they show you the cutout again, and then they say this is real. What nonsense! How are you constructing space in that? I would much rather that you have a close up of a man's pocket and putting a gun in the pocket, and then a reverse shot, which is like a completely different space, and then a time pressure shot. That's what Tarkovsky and Malik and all these people do. Instead of the reverse shot, they have a time pressure shot where you feel
Hmm.
an intensity. And a lot of people tell me that, okay, what is time image? You keep talking about time
Hmm.
image. Well, to put it simply, time image is when the significative, denotational, connotational aspects of the image as language. Cinema is
Hmm.
not a language. People say, oh, the film language user, but where is the language? When you watch a film, do you say Swanik is a good interviewer and Devdutt is a really bad speaker? So this is a subject predicate. Swanik is a good interviewer. Good is the adjective. And Devdutt, another subject, is a bad speaker, another predicate, right? So this is not then cinema. No, common sense indicates. You don't have to go to film studies, to film school, and say that acha, subject predicate. Nahi. You switch on any film on GTV, and you are like, there's no subject predicate. How can they say this as a language of cinema? So this is again extraordinarily ignorant people saying cinema or the cinema language used in this film. No, sorry, there was no cinema language. Cinema is not a language, and this is really something that I'm trying to fight. That people don't start saying the film language. This is information. What is the information here? Sitar, books, Devdutt, medicines, glass. This is the
Hmm.
information. There's no subject predicate. There's no connotation. There's no denotation. It's just 3:34. We've been talking for 34 minutes. Hopefully, I've created some value. Otherwise, and
Definitely.
because for me, the Schopenhauerian approach to cinema, which is that there's a Maya functioning in the shot, and Hitchcock creates the Maya through the MacGuffin, is that when you take a shot, and I'm working very hard on this because I'm trying to, eventually get into some kind of film practice, is that when you will the shot, you
Hmm.
should will the shot. The audience should will the shot. And what Mr. Kaul says is for the audience, because moving images are violent, for the audience to will the shot, there should be no intentionality in the shot. And therefore the audience can will the shot.
Hmm.
It's very
Yeah.
easy to talk about it on Zoom. It's very difficult to do. And I
Right.
this image of wood, from Leclerc, I think, just a wood and a broken bucket and the water trickling. It's from Leclerc. And I feel that is a willing shot that Antonioni has taken, very easy to talk about in a lecture, very difficult.
Right. I guess it's also, I guess like going outside cinema, I guess it's also this preoccupation with physical sciences and maths that has plagued our country, because of which we look at everything as a straightforward language that is structured, so on and so forth. But then that is artifice. That's not what the cinematic practice is about. I also found this very interesting idea of anonymity in like one of the most profound scenes in For Fake, where you have Wells talking about this entire structure, stone made. I think it was a chapel, and he talks about how anonymity gives it a certain form of truth. What do you think of that?
Well, that's what I'm trying to say, that if I teach you dialectical method of Nagarjuna, which I will this year, so you get really fried and feel that, you should hack Zoom and get this idiot moron's home address so that we can kill him Tuesday afternoon, kill Devdutt, no more of these moronic madhyamika, vigraha, vyava, vyavartani, the dialectic method of Nagarjuna, no more of this, ignorance in a, we don't understand Nagarjuna. But that is precisely the point, that it's not about Nagarjuna, it's about Buddhism. But
Hmm.
when you say it's about Deleuze, it's about Deleuze, because Deleuze is so that then the ego. So the traditional form is that you like who wrote the Upanishad? You don't know.
Right.
It's not important to know. It's not important to know. So the anonymity is, I think, in the age of social media, it's that I didn't do anything. So that's interesting for me because everybody wants to say that I did something. So I'm like, okay, you did something. So good. But see, because the question is to not say anything. Like the Buddha himself, he would not answer some questions. Like someone would tell him that, is there bliss? He'll say yes. The next person will come to him, ask them, is there nothingness? He'll say yes. And then Ananda, his student, will say, but you told this person yes and this person no. And he said, no, that was for them. Why are you listening to me? That was for them. It's meant for that person's psyche. So uh, the entire discourse on cinema is that the psyche is false. It's not real. If you say that, I'm feeling XYZ, my psychic state. But the actor has a psychic state in cinema. So you have to alter that psychic state and then prove it to be false. Very easy to talk about it, very difficult to do. Alter the psychic state of the actor and then prove that the entire construct of the psyche is false. It's very difficult. Very easy to take a lecture on it. Very difficult to do.
Right, right, right. So, Mani Kaul, I have this very interesting quote which I've been trying to deconstruct. He talks about how, in particular in Idiot, ideas cancel each other out and the form germinates. What is your interpretation of that?
Yeah, it's a very Buddhist Hegelian thing to say, which Mr. Call that negation of nothing. Minus minus equals plus. You know.
Hmm.
So what Mr. Call says in India is that you have a concentration of events, but these concentration of events cancel each other out so that you feel the flux. But the flux is only possible when you have the immobile. So you
Hmm.
construct the immobile, and then you have the Heraclitean flux, which is only possible when you reach the immobile. So you
Okay.
reach the static, and then you feel the difference. The difference is only possible when everything is the same. This is something that people don't do nowadays. They don't make everything the same so that you see minute differences. That's one of
Hmm.
the good things of calculus and mathematics. But who does that? Nobody does that because it's very difficult to do. People want to make a film, make it, and feel they've arrived. And that's not a contribution to cinema. Like Mr. Kaul would say that, okay, you want to make a film in 2021. In 2031, would you want to make the same film? Then make the film. You know? People just want to, get into the
Right.
limelight, and it's very sad.
Right. And like according to my study, I had come across this very interesting philosophical idea that Slavoj Zizek spoke about, wherein he spoke about how there's this you try to go towards the object of desire, and in that artificial performance, you that is ideal instead of reaching the object of desire and having that pleasure, excessive pleasure, so to say. And
Yeah.
I found that interesting when I connect that to Elmir's entire this entire point of not achieving true art, but engaging in the practice of it, such that it is artificial. What do you think that way?
Well, Zizek is a kind of a crypto Buddhist, and he's trying to talk about how, like he says, that the transcendental should come out of the junk we live in, not out of a higher reality. It's the same thing he's saying here, that instead of thinking about getting the desired object, it's about performing. The performativity of going towards that object is what the real is. It's a very Lacanian point. It's a good point. Yeah.
Hmm. So yeah, I guess like we have had a very productive conversation at
I
this
hope
point.
so. I mean, my address is 102 Drew Sheetal, Gulmore Road, number 9, JVPD, Mumbai 49. If you're irritated by this talk, you can come anytime and kill me.
No, 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 not at
Not
all.
you, Sonic, the viewers, yeah. Somebody will watch this and moron goes on and on. I'm very happy if you are very violent with me, because for me, cinema is very violent. The entire idea of moving, taking an image and making it
Hmm.
move is very violent. Therefore, there needs to be a withdrawal of violence, but nobody does that. They just show you violence, and now the films are really violent with guns and all that. So then I'm like, this is like really not making any sense. Thank you, Swanik, for having me on your show. I hope you got something from it. Yeah.
There's also, I also want to ask you a couple of standard questions that I ask everyone in my interviews. Would that be fine with you? Can you tell us about a movie that you watched as a child and upon rewatching as a critic, your viewing changed?
Yeah, The Sacrifice by Tarkovsky. I saw it recently. It's a very poor film, but I saw it as a child.
It's a poor film right now. Okay. Interesting. Uh,
It's
if
very
you're in
depressing. Yeah, it's very depressing that Bergman
true.
funds the film. Bergman funds the film. He makes it in
Oh,
Bergman's backyard, and
uh-huh.
he just destroys his artistic capabilities. Bergman destroys Tarkovsky's artistic capabilities, and it's a kind of coffin, that Bergman has dug up for Tarkovsky in his own backyard with his cinematographer. That's cinema. It's a
Hmm.
very difficult, not easy. Yeah.
Right, right, right. So next question is, if you're in a room with someone who doesn't watch or know cinema at all, you want to, like hypothetically, you want to tell them why cinema is an important part. What would you say?
Well, I've often observed that when you try to talk about cinema, people are just not interested. It's much more difficult to try to get them interested in philosophy, and then cinema is the practice of philosophy. It takes much longer, but it's more effective. If you, te- if you tell them that watch a Godard film, they think you're just name dropping and trying to be very cool. So it's the point isn't so. It's about trying to achieve the philosophical approach to life and then to cinema.
Interesting, right? Because it so happens that often, like at least for the first five movies that I watched, which were art films, once I spent a couple of days thinking about them, they started acquiring a new sense of personal meaning. And I feel that even like Lacan, one thing about Lacanian theory is that it deeply personalizes the analysis, in comparison to Freud, for example, because Freud is very detached. Not very often do you find everyone agreeing to the phallic symbol idea of viewing cinema, so to say. The next question is, in the history of Indian parallel cinema, if you have a choice to go back in the past and view a premiere of a movie again, which would
Roti,
you choose?
Roti. Mani Kaul
Uski Roti. Ah, okay.
That
Interesting.
film completely transformed me, and I had dreams about, because there are no DVDs available of Uski
Hmm.
Roti at least then in 2004.
Hmm.
And I used to get dreams about Uski Roti, and yeah.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So yeah, it's been a very enjoyable conversation for me personally. I'll be obviously putting a lot of references on the frame so that people get ideas such as Neumann and Heil and stuff like that. But thank you very much for your
All right.
inputs.
Hope to see you in the new semester. Bye bye.
Definitely, yes. Looking forward to it. Can't wait. Bye, sir.